Um, Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us from. And thank you so much for joining us in today's amazing session. I mean, it's been a while that been trying to put together such a session. We are glad that we are able to finally actually have the first maiden edition of this particular session. So I want to use the opportunity to welcome everyone to Security Compliance Corner. So this is going to be a monthly event in which we'll be bringing in different security and compliance professionals to talk to us about various things that we need to actually, take note of for our organizations. So as an individual, things maybe you want to start a career in security or compliance as well, we have experts that will be bringing into the session to actually, educate us on how you can be an information security professional or even a compliance professional. So why I can see a lot of people on the call, Chukuma, Emmanuel, Joseph, thank you so much for joining. So please, before we start the event properly, I want you to use the chat window. Please introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining us from and what are your expectations from this session. So before we start, please can you use the chat window to introduce yourself? Just tell us your name, where you're joining us from, and what are your expectations for this session before we start. So we have like about 3 minutes to do that. Please introduce yourself in the chat before we actually go into the sessions because we want to really know if this particular session we want to meet everybody's expectations for this particular session. So please, I want to encourage us to please use the chat window, introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining us from, and also your expectations for this particular sessions. Okay, I can see three people typing already in the chat. Please use the chat window to introduce yourself. I want to welcome us properly. I can see and Tofumi on the call, Stephen on the call, Omoboye on the call, Emmanuel, Joseph, Chukuma on the call, and our speakers. So please, can you just use the chat window? Just introduce yourself. We just want to basically welcome you into today's session. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen is joining us from Abuja. He's excited about the event. His expectation is to have more in-depth understanding about compliance. Right, yeah. So this is actually a very good place for you to learn about compliance. Joseph from Lagos, thank you so much for joining. Joseph is one of our MVPs in Lagos, Nigeria. Expecting great things from this session. Thank you so much. Manu is also joining from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you, Manu, for joining. We have another Emmanuel Imafu joining us from Lagos, Nigeria as well. Please use the chat window, just introduce yourself, tell us your expectations, where you're joining us from, and your expectations. Oh, Chukuma is also joining from Abuja. Awesome. So looking forward to improve your knowledge in security and compliance through this forum. Thank you so much. Yes, that is actually the purpose of this forum, so that our knowledge in security, our knowledge in compliance can actually, improve basically. Thank you for joining us, Chukuma. So we still have more people that I want. Just please use your chat window, introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, and also your expectations. Amoboy, thank you so much for joining from Lagos. Expectation for the session is what security is about and how to start a career. Thank you so much. Yeah, so those are things that we're going to cover in this particular session. Thank you so much. So I can see new people joining us. Collect, please. Can you please use the chat window, introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining us from and your expectations for the sessions. Emmanuel, I see that to understand what security it's all about. Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much. Jim, I'll be joining from Lagos. You need more insights and updates regarding the Microsoft Graph API in Microsoft Purview. Thank you so much for that. Yes, part of things that we're going to cover in today's session. All right, thank you so much, everyone. We're going to jump into the session properly. So once again, I want us to welcome us to Security Compliance Corner. So we'll be talking about everything on security, everything on compliance. So beyond just cloud security, covers everything, cyber security, red team, white team, even governance, risk compliance. These are some of the things that we'll be covering in today's session. So let me introduce myself. My name is Emmanuel Itoje, and I'm the host of this particular event, although I have people working behind the scene with me to actually put together this event. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. as well as currently I'm one of the MCT community lead for Nigeria and West Africa. I'm also a Microsoft certified educator. I became a Microsoft certified educator earlier this year. Then my area of specialization, I'm a technical architect, and I specialize in Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, Azure AI, as well as cloud security. And I'm also a co-lead of one of our security community in Nigeria, which is on the Microsoft Nigeria Security User Group. So I worked as a co-lead where we actually mentor people around careers in cybersecurity. And in today's event, I'm not just alone. I have two powerful, amazing women joining me on this session. I'm so privileged to actually have them joining us with me on this call because they are here to actually help us to answer different questions around information security, different questions around compliance. So the first person that I have with me is Chidinma. Chidinma is an experienced information security specialist with strong expertise in Microsoft security and compliance. That's talking about Microsoft Purview. Microsoft recently renamed it to Purview. She has guided organizations in safeguarding sensitive data and implementing robust security policies and balancing our protection with productivity. So it's very important as a security person, you have to balance protection with productivity. And this is something that Chidinma does a lot. And with the passion of empowering people, Chidinma has combined technical excellence, problem-solving skills, and customer-focused approach to deliver secure, practical, and scalable solutions while inspiring others to grow in confidence and achieve their professional growth. Please, can you use the reaction button to actually welcome Chidinma to this particular session? Please use your reaction button, maybe your reaction to welcome her to this particular session. Thank you so much, Chidinma, because I know you're very, very busy, and for you to actually say, okay, you'd like to be on this session on a very short notice. Can you just tell us briefly about you, how the weather is where you are? Just tell us something about you, Chidinma.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Like he said, my name is Chidinma Ugwu, and he has already introduced me, but I'm currently in Lagos, and the weather here is sunny and it's bright, so it's a good weather, and it's not too cold, it's not too hot, so it's a good weather. So thank you everybody for your presence here, and I look forward to what we are going to share and all the knowledge we are going to get from this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chidinma. It's so good to actually have you on the session. So the second power woman with me, joining me on the session is actually Destiny. Destiny is an experienced compliance professional and a lawyer. So she's not just a compliance specialist, she's also a lawyer with over 5 years of expert in fintech, payment, and financial services. She has led high impact compliance programs, advised on cross-border market expansion, and built regulatory framework that balance growth with governance. Her career includes frontline onboarding and due diligence leadership in merchant acquiring, regulatory compliance strategy, and fintech advisory, where she has helped businesses, right? She has helped business navigate licensing, talking about AML, KYC, as well as evolving digital finance regulations. She's also a thought leader, publishing widely on compliance. If you go to Destiny LinkedIn profile today, you see she has published a lot of things on compliance and governance for fintech in Africa. And beyond her professional practice, Destiny is an author and a speaker who is passionate about simplifying complex regulatory issues into practical growth-driven strategies for startups and established institutions alike. She brings a unique blend of legal rigor, compliance experts, and a real-world insights to every conversation. Thank you so much, Destiny, for joining us. Can you just tell us a bit about where you are, some of the things that our participants should actually expect from you from this particular session?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Trust we are all doing great. My name is Destiny. I believe you have said almost everything. So, okay. So some of the things you need to expect from today's session is things around compliance, governance, and risks as it relates to security. Okay, I'm currently speaking from Lagos, Nigeria, and over here it seemed very cozy. Although Chidinma said it's sunny, so I guess my part of Lagos is a bit cozy at the moment. So I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to an insightful session.
Thank you so much, Destiny. Thank you so much. So please, this session is actually an open forum feel free to use the chat window, drop your questions, any questions you have at all for our speaker. Feel free to use the chat window. And if you want to actually come off mute, use your mic, just use the raise button on your Teams to raise your hand, and I'm going to call you for your question. So let's dive into the session properly. There are some questions that we'll receive in a couple of weeks that our speakers will actually be helping us to actually dissect. And before we actually jump into that, there is something that when I was researching around this topic in preparation for this topic, there were two things that comes to mind around security and compliance. Now, security actually protects organization assets, as we know, and sensitive data from threats as well as breaches. While compliance ensures adherence to laws and standards, basically to minimize legal and operational risks. So for organization commitments around commitment to both security and compliance actually foster trust and also support effective governance. So I want having this in mind. So these are some of the things that we'll be looking at as we proceed in today's session. So the first question I'll be asking from Chidinma is this. So what's top business risks are actually driving information protection strategy this year, and how did you translate them into a concrete policies? So things around top business risks that you feel that based on your experience in this, because we know that things in IT keeps evolving, right? So what are the top
Yes.
business risks that are driving your information protection strategy for you?
Okay, this year, one of some of the strategies that the risks that have been driving this year's information protection, they are data breaches and AI data leakage, insider threat and oversharing, and unsanctioned apps, regulatory and compliance violations. And when it comes to data breaches, like we have sensitive customers that are actually not quite okay, their data being exposed to external people. So those kind of customers, you wouldn't want their data and their information be exposed. And we're looking at AI data leakage. So currently, right now, there is a rise in generative AI, like co-pilots introducing new risks. So such as that, uh, organizations right now are kind of putting policies to restrict their users from pasting sensitive data into Copilot prompts and also AI generated outputs lacking protection. So also another one is insider risks where users are unintentionally or intentionally sharing organizations' sensitive data or information outside their organization. So the policies that have been put in place for this is sensitivity label and encryption, which is purview. What it does is to protect content and classify content. For example, it classifies some of them for the ones that can be used internally and the ones that can be shared outside. We have a label called public, which you can share outside. We also have DLP and endpoint policies. That's to block unauthorized sharing, copying, and printing of sensitive content to AI sites and like open chat gpt open ai. So we have endpoint dlp for that, and we also have dlp that blocks users from sharing documents or files outside the organizations. And also in teams, we also have set policies in dlp that also blocks users from sharing information via teams or sharepoint. We also have access control, which restricts sensitive systems and data on role-based location and device compliance. We also have which is audits and monitoring tools that alert and report to detect policy violations by users in the organizations. So currently, and we also educate staffs on risks and labeling practices and safe use of collaboration tools. So currently, that's all for risks that drives information protection this year.
Thank you so much for that. With the age of AI, a lot of users want to actually use AI to do their work to be more productive, and without
Yes.
even checking the responsible principle of responsible AI, in which you have to actually go through either as an organization approve me to actually use particular AI to this project to do this engagement or not. So those are actually very important. And one of the things that Microsoft tried to do with AI is that Microsoft tries to tell us that they don't use your data to actually train they don't use your data, organization data to actually train those AI models. However, organization policies is actually also very important to be put in place to ensure that, okay, you don't share this organization information with using a third-party AI system. Most organizations today, they adopt some AI. Like, for example, where I work, we have an internal AI tool that we use that is actually that must, even before even using that particular tool, even though it's an internal tool, you must go through a particular training until you go through that training before you are approved to use that particular AI tool. Thank you so much. And one of the statistics I read about, you mentioned things around insider risks. One of the statistics I read
Okay.
about Microsoft was that insider risks contribute to about 70% of data breaches
Yes.
because
Yes. Where
users,
employees share
un
those, they
yes,
try to go
unintentionally,
on third
yeah,
parties to get informations. Maybe the one they are using in the core in the company doesn't actually produce as much information they need, so they try to utilize other AI services. So
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Yeah, Destiny, let's look at the compliance part for this discussion. Now, what does compliance mean beyond just ticking the boxes? And what are the effects of non-compliance for organizations? So that's like a two-in-one question. What does compliance mean? Because for me, it's all I hear the word compliance a lot. In fact, it was when Microsoft changed their product name from security and compliance to Microsoft Purview, I started becoming comfortable with using the word Microsoft Purview because it was security and compliance. What does compliance actually mean for organization? And beyond ticking the box, what does it actually mean? And if an organization is not compliant today, what are the effects?
Okay, thank you for that question. So, oftentimes we hear a lot of people or even founders, companies say that compliance is, beyond ticking the boxes. But most times when you dive in deeper, you get to realize that they do not really understand what it means for you to say compliance means what compliance means beyond ticking the boxes. Right. So compliance beyond ticking the boxes means that you're not just, carrying out audit assessments. You're not just, avoiding fines and penalties, but rather it means that you're creating an enabling environment that enables your business to thrive, even in the space where you have regulatory uncertainties, right? It means that you are imploring trust and resilience in your organization, right? Because a lot of people think that it's just to follow the rules, the regulation and the circular and the standards that come in at different points in time. A lot of people feel that it just means that you need to just follow what the rules are saying, but rather it means that you need to be proactive. You need to set the tone from the top, even from your directors and executives. So, but compliance beyond ticking the boxes actually means that you are shifting the culture from
At
just
what?
doing what.
So it's
Sorry.
until everything became one.
Okay. Okay, so I was saying that compliance beyond ticking the boxes means that you are not just avoiding penalties and fines. It doesn't mean that you are just enforcing the rules. Rather, you are empowering your people in your organization, right? You are trying to employ a culture where everybody sees compliance as priority and they follow suit. So I think compliance beyond ticking the boxes is not just, like I said, following the rules, and some of the effects of non-compliance stems from legal exposures, like legal and financial exposures, reputational damages, and even displacement of your company's culture. So for financial and legal exposures, it has to do with financial risk that your company can incur at different points in time. So I'll just go ahead to list some of them. So the real impact of non-compliance, the real impact for non-compliance is actually multidimensional, like I said. So it's not just, beyond, it's not just, it goes far beyond, ticking the boxes, far beyond fines and regulatory penalties. Some of them are financial penalties, like I mentioned. So we have seen that a lot of companies, even globally, companies like JP Morgan, Standard Charter have lost billions of dollars due to AML issues, like AML failures when it comes to compliance. So for things like that, you need to ensure that the cost of you need to ensure that the your company's culture rather encourages, compliance in every sense of the word. So another thing that we can also look at are reputational damages. We all know that when it comes to businesses, trust is actually like a currency, and once you have like a compliance failure, it tends to erase more like your brand equity and every other thing. So customers, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was speaking to reputational damages, right? So I was saying that the cost for non-compliance, right? Because I remember when I was in the development banking space, I remember my boss used to say something. He used to say that the cost of non-compliance is actually more than the cost of compliance. So that means that when you are not compliant, the cost of that at the end of the day would even cost you more than you imploring the compliance measures that you need to implore. So speaking of reputational damage in that light, it means that when you have some compliance failures around your controls or around the organization as a whole, it then means that that can actually derail your reputation, derail the trust that your customers have for you or for your business, right? So the cost of non-compliance, it cannot be overemphasized. It actually incurs a lot, even as far as operational disruptions. So non-compliance often leads to some sort of restrictions. We have seen examples of companies in Nigeria, in Africa, and even globally, where their licenses have been restricted due to non-compliance. So, okay, so we've seen such examples, right? So non-compliance essentially, the effect of non-compliance essentially is far more than you can ever imagine. So it's best that the company complies at when due or when expected.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I remember reading a report. I won't mention the big four. The regulatory industry, they find them. Why? Because they find out that some of their staff, they use AI in their professional exams. And already by culture, one of the during the onboarding, every employee rather is expected to go through a training on compliance. That this we are in an highly regulated industry. So anything, if you're not compliant with this, that means you're going to actually affect our reputations, even as an individual. So for those individuals that were caught with that particular bad practice, their licenses were revoked. So they cannot even practice that particular profession again. So these are some of the effects. Thank you so much for that, Destiny. Um, Chidinma, I want to go back to you talking about you mentioned things around sensitive label, right? Labeling for different documents. So what's your
Yes.
approach to sensitive label design, right? In terms of tiers, defaults, or sub-levels, or to even avoid a label sprawl, and in terms of a confusion as well. What are some of your approach when you design sensitive labels?
Okay, thank you very much. When it comes to sensitivity label, the goal is to keep things simple, easy to use so that users don't get overwhelmed or confused. So we see a lot of times when customers that come on call and you are like you look on their screen, you're seeing 15 top level top level labels and you're wondering why won't there be confusion. So our advice to keep top level labels which are public, internal, confidential and highly confidential, up to 5 or 6 then, because it's easy to understand and it covers most of the business, what the business needs, because the public represents, you can share it outside with people outside. Then the one of internal is for people within the organization. Then confidential and highly confidential, they apply encryption. So you can use that to restrict some information or documents or emails from people even within the organization. You don't want them to have access to that. So almost these four labels almost every it has covered almost every need you need. But sometimes we also see in a situation where okay, we can use sub labels, but that's when in the rare cases, or maybe when the business needs it, like differentiating between confidential, finance, and HR departments. So you maybe want them to have their own kind of label they will apply to their documents. So that's when you have confidential finance, which also use that to apply for the HR departments can use them. Then also we advise to create a default label, because most times you don't assume that your users will always remember to apply labels to their documents. So we advise to use internal label and make it default, so that anytime a user tries to save a file, there will be a policy tips to remind the person to apply label to that document. Or so that's just it. So for when it comes to business, I would advise top level labels, which is public and internal confidential and highly confidential. The sub labels when the business needs it, then the default label, so that documents and emails doesn't go out without being classified.
Thank you
So
so
that's
much.
it. Yes.
Thank you so much. Right. So that's actually a very good practice, because I remember working with an organization, right? They were going to send a confidential document to a client. That document was not encrypted. It's actually a very bad practice. When a document has been labeled confidential or highly confidential, such documents, so far you are sending it outside to a client, you must actually apply encryption for those documents. And Microsoft has actually made it very easy, especially for organizations that are actually using Outlook, for example. Now, within the Outlook application itself, you should be able to know how to, encrypt a document such a way that when you're not giving when the client has received the document, then another means you now send the password to access that particular document. So since I totally agree with you. The public document available for the entire public, internal for within the organization, those documents should not go out at all. Then those confidential, highly confidential, the one you mentioned about finance, confidential finance, within the finance department only. Example, the payroll, for example. Now, you don't want a junior employee to know what an executive is earning. Imagine what that can cost. So for all those documents now, you have to have a specific labeling for them. Thank you so much for that. Um, Destiny, let's come back to you. Let's talk about compliance again, right? Now, what role does compliance play in protecting customers' trust?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so some of the roles that compliance play in protecting customers' trust stems across data protection and privacy, financial integrity, and security and fraud protection. So now, speaking to data protection and privacy, we have a lot of examples. One of which is that of Facebook. I remember when Facebook had the scandals, the Cambridge scandal. The legal fines were a lot, but the deeper cost, or should I say, the more essential thing to look into was the fact that that was avoidable, and it was due to some compliance failures that made that crystallize. So now we have a lot of frameworks that can be employed to avoid such fines and to protect customers, right? So for speaking of data protection, we have the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, that actually protects customers' data, especially in the EU. Then in Nigeria, we have the NDPR, which helps protect consumers alike. So when we have or when we employ such frameworks, we tend to see that customers' data are allocated accordingly. We get to request for consent. Customers get to know what their data are actually being used for. So now, speaking of financial integrity, I would like to give an example from Wells Fargo. So there's also another scandal that happened in the US. I think that was in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. And that led to more like a reputational damage for Wells Fargo. So customers felt, based on the fact that this company do not have the, should I say, integrity, customer integrity, so to speak. So because of that, they lost a lot of customers. A lot of customers felt that their systems are not formidable when it comes to compliance, and as a result, they lost trust and their customers, fell out from their systems. So the role that compliance play in ensuring customers trust is just that you have to keep your compliance framework in place. Like, you have to keep them in check at every point in time, because for a customer to come to your system to onboard, it then means that the customer says, okay, I trust you to hold my money, I trust you to hold my data, so therefore I'm onboarding on your system. And as a result, you have to ensure that your systems and your security as well are properly put in place, so that you would have to, be able to save, or should I say, carry out your functions, as well as protect your customers' data extensively. So one last point I would like to add is that of prevention and security. I think I mentioned that before. So we've seen that in the payment space and even in the fintech space as well, fraud is actually one of the fastest or most prominent issues, because it's a digital first system and is prone to fraud and security issues. So we need to ensure that we build robust KYC, AML, and investigation. Sorry, can you hear me, please?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so we need to ensure that we build robust KYC AML monitoring frameworks, as well as incident response frameworks, to ensure that these things are put in place, and you essentially say to your customer that we have your assurances, like your utmost assurances, and the customers is well assured that yes, is our data, is our money, and every other thing with you is safe. So the role of protecting, or should I say conclusively, the role of a compliance officer in protecting customers' trust is basically about proactive assurances, right? Just giving the customers assurance that, okay, everything, your data, your money, and everything you have with us is safe. So I think that's one of the some of the prominent ways that compliance play in protecting customers' trust. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. While you're having this conversation, what was playing on my head is that I was trying to marry this with data protections. For example, now, I've already told a customer that provide this information, customer name, address, your email address, even your home address, some PII data, right? Now, those PII data now, the customer is providing those information for me. Let's say, for example, now I want to, go to a bank to sign up to get an account with them. There are some information they will ask about me, which are actually PII data, right? Now, I'm giving them those information with the trust that they are going to secure those information. Imagine a situation whereby the bank now they were now there was an incident, a bad actor hacked their network, and they were able to get all those customers information, and those information were now exposed on the dark web, in which somebody is selling it on the dark web. So that means all my identity, somebody can actually basically steal my identity, go to the dark web and go and buy that identity and claim to be me, right? So with compliance now, I when organization follow the compliance framework, I'm secure that, okay, this information I've provided to this organization, they will ensure that that information is protected in the sense that I don't have to worry about it at all, worry whether my information will actually be leaked out or not. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, let's talk a bit back about what we are talking about in information protection. Chidinma, so where do you draw the line between a user-driven or auto-labeling? We talk about labeling documents earlier, right? So where do you draw the line
Yes.
between user-driven labeling or the auto-labeling? And how do you measure adoption quality, not just in volumes?
Okay, thank you very much. You draw the line between the user-driven is actually manual labeling, between manual labeling and auto labeling based on how much control the user needs versus how much consistency the organization needs. Manual labeling makes sense when users understand the sensitivity of their content. You want them to decide on the right label. Auto labeling makes sense when you need to enforce rules across the board. You want consistency without relying on users remembering to label. For example, credit card numbers. You would want to use auto labeling for that, so that anytime once a user gets a document like that, the auto labeling just applies automatically. So that's what the difference where you draw the line between manual labeling and auto labeling. Auto labeling is simply for classified content. Sensitive content should not leave the organization without applying the right sensitivity label, because some users, they may not really understand the gravity of what the document they are with. So, but if you have your information security specialist there, the person can create that label that whenever any document that has a employee's ID or credit card or account number, PII, let this label apply automatically. So even if a user tries to kind of share the file, the label will automatically apply to that document, and the person that is being shared to will not have access to it, even if the person received the document. Measuring adoption quality for manual versus auto labeling, we have accuracy versus policy intent. This checks how often the applied label matches the intended business policy. Example, if confidential documents are being labeled internal too often, adoption looks high, but the quality is poor. Because here because the intent of it is whether it matches the business policy, not actually are you labeling, or oh, we labeled, we've labeled 10,000 files, but that 10,000 files, were they labeled correctly, or were they just normal labels? Because just like what you said earlier, where an employee shared a document that was meant for internal use. So this is where it comes in. So the adoption quality has to do with whether the documents are being labeled correctly and not just being labeled. Another one is end users behavior. How often users change an auto-labeled label or ignore to a manual label prompt, because the default label, anytime you create a document, it will prompt you to apply a label. So some employees, they will ignore it, maybe because they feel that, oh, it will restrict. Maybe they don't just understand what that label actually does. But that's also where you train your users on what each label does, so that they will know the right label to apply to documents and not just labeling documents. Another one is business risk reduction. If the labels are being used properly, you notice few cases where sensitive information end up in the wrong place, which helps reduce business risks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. My mind was just going back to when I needed to create some documents, right? And those documents, by default, organization have internal by default. But I know that these documents I'm creating, I'm sharing with the client. Sharing with the client means that it is not an internal default that organization is applying. So I, as an individual, I must be responsible enough to say, okay, this document, I'm creating it for clients. So let me use the right label, which is confidential or highly confidential, depending on the business, depending on the business requirements. And also another thing that comes to mind is I've seen a scenario whereby user is trying to share a SharePoint site that has information about IBAN, bank informations, you know, to a fellow colleagues via Teams. And we have this policy that you cannot share any document, whether it's on OneDrive, it's on SharePoint, you cannot share it with a user via Teams. So the user just came to us that, oh, I'm trying to share this information, this link, a SharePoint site with my colleagues. I'm unable to share it. This was a flag. I think you can see the flag. The flag says that you cannot share a document that's a link or a URL that contains IBAN via Teams. There is a channel for that. So we had to discuss with the change management team to create another training awareness so that users are aware that these policies are there for a reason. If your Teams is compromised today now, so that means those information that you are sharing with your colleagues, right, has been intercepted by bad actors. So there are other means to actually go through that. So thank you so much about that, because manual labeling and auto labeling is actually something that organizations actually need to consider. Thank you so much. Yeah, Destiny, let's look at something around compliance again. Now, should compliance be seen as a cost center or a business enabler? That's one part of the question. And what is the role of a compliance officer in an organization? As I know you're a compliance specialist with your organization, what is your role? And overall, should compliance be seen as a cost center or a business enabler?
Okay, thank you so much for this question. It's actually a very important question. But before I proceed, can you kindly confirm you can hear me? There's a bit of background noise where I am, so I just want to be sure you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay. Okay, now going straight into the questions, right? It says if compliance should compliance be seen as a cost center or a business enabler, right? So you saying that compliance is a cost center means that compliance is something that is cost. I'm sorry that you need to employ. Okay, it means that compliance is something that you need to, fund. And as a result, most founders, companies, and even some teams see it as a cost center, like something very expensive, right? So for me, I believe that compliance is a business enabler, right? Because the essence of compliance in an organization is to ensure that the business adheres to the rules and regulations, standards and guidelines that are being churned out by the regulators at every point in time. But to do that, it costs money in the sense that you need to, employ tools and even teams to be able to carry out those activities very well. Now, if you, but most people are supposed to what most people do say or most people do know. And the reason why they see it as a cost center is because they do not prioritize compliance. Compliance is not something that should be minimized. Compliance is something that should be prioritize at every given point in time, because I believe that compliance is like a backbone to your business. So if something is a backbone to your business, if something would help your business thrive, why don't you employ the resources that you need to employ into it and get it up and running to help your business grow, right? So some of the reasons why I say that compliance is not a cost enabler, sorry, it's not a cost center, rather, it's a business enabler, is because it helps us get market access and growth generally. Because if you look at compliance very well, especially in places like Africa, compliance is something that helps your business scale. Without compliance, you can't scale your business. In Nigeria now, let's bring it down to Nigeria. Without a license, you can't operate certain business models when it comes to financial services sector. So compliance is something that actually helps you gain market access, like penetrate into the market, and definitely helps you, scale your business. And it's important to note that companies that heavily invest in compliance actually get to scale faster than most other companies. Another thing is that if you're a startup, for example, it helps you gain investors' confidence, right? I've been opportunity to be in rooms where investors and founders are pitching their ideas or initiatives to investors. And aside from them asking them for how much is this business going to generate in the first 6 months, they ask them, what are your compliance structure? What are your compliance maturity rating at this point in time? And for companies or for founders that do not have that in place, the funds were pulled back from them. So why I'm stating this is because a lot of especially startup think that compliance is something that you should consider later because it is expensive. Unknown to them, from the very first day you start out to set, like you set out to, you set out for your business, you need to consider compliance as something that you need to prioritize. So essentially speaking, compliance is not a cost center, right? It's something that should be prioritized because it enables your business to grow, essentially. Then speaking to the role of a compliance officer, the role of a compliance officer, it can be overemphasized in an organization, is a lot. But one of the paramount role of a compliance officer is that they serve as more like a guardian for integrity and trust in your organization, right? So trust is the core of most financial services business models in Africa, in fact, globally. So what the compliance officer does is that they do not just help you maybe protect your license, build your compliance programs, but they help you to, protect your reputation from damages, like I earlier mentioned. So the compliance officer definitely ensures that the company follows the rules and regulations accordingly. They set controls, build frameworks, yes. But at the end of the day, all of that they do essentially gears towards them protecting the company's reputation, right? Another thing is that they also serve like a bridge between the regulators and the business, right? So taking for example, you are a super agent business, like you operate a super agent business model. What the compliance officer does essentially is that they help your business, like they bridge the gap between you and your regulator. They serve as a liaison officer between you and the regulator, because most times the regulator cannot just leave his or her office and come to speak to just anybody. They go through the compliance officer. So where there are some stipulated regulations, stipulated expectations from these regulators, it is the compliance officer that helps the organization to translate this into more like actionable frameworks that helps them set out controls and then kind of domesticate that into their policies and procedures essentially. So the role of a compliance officer is a lot, right? So it's a lot. So amongst many things, those are some of the roles of a compliance officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. When I thinking about the roles of a compliance officer, when I joined an organization that was highly regulated, right? One of the key people in the organizations are the compliance specialists. And their work, from my interaction with them, their major work is to guide us. Now, one of the things that is expected for us in where I work is that if you have shares, if you have stock, if you have bond anywhere, right, you need to declare it. In the compliance team, we have to work with you to check that this particular stock, shares or bond, you can keep it based on the business regulations. And the team are there to basically guide us step by steps, check the particular shares you have, the organization, if that organization is actually part of an audited entities, that they are actually, they are the auditors, because you cannot have a shares with a company that your company is actually auditing, right? So those are things, those are the guidance. When you mention the word guidance, right? They guide us to ensure that we are actually in compliance. And at the end of the day, the goal is to ensure that by the time they are submitting reports back to the regulators, they're able to tell the regulators that, okay, 95% of our staffs, when they join us, they used to have those shares before with this so and so organization that we are audited entities. But as a compliance team, we are able to guide them to let them know why they cannot order shares, right? For them to sell those shares off, right? So they are able to basically guide us. And that's something that it was actually an amazing experience for me, because that was like the first time I was before then I used to see compliance team as a team that are like police. They're after my life. They don't want me to, but that particular experience actually changed my orientation about compliance team. Like, oh, so I could having this team can actually, help me to, to be successful in my role. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Chidinma, let's jump back into, you mentioned something around endpoint DLP, right? When you're talking about we asked one of the questions. So for you, how are you using endpoint DLP, and how do you balance a telemetry with employee privacy, even a BYOD? How do you manage it? How do you use endpoint DLP?
Okay, we use endpoint DLP to protect sensitive company data on devices, both company owned and employee owned devices, which is bring your own device, by monitoring and controlling actions like copying, printing, or sharing files outside the organization. We use endpoint DLP to protect sensitive company data on all devices and monitor actions like that. So, for example, we have, users and staffs, they come in with their own device, and because these devices are not being onboarded through Intune, you wouldn't know what they are using, what they are accessing the company's data with, or how they are sharing it. So, but how we monitor it is by balancing, is by we focus on collecting just the metadata, but we don't encroach on their privacy, not personal content. We just simply track what the file they share through, when they transfer a file through removable USB. We track it, but we don't read the personal documents. We just actually track the files they share and how they shared it, and if it's in compliance with the policy. That's how we monitor endpoint DLP for people bringing in their own device. We don't encroach in their privacy. We just monitor the activities through Activity Explorer, or it tracks when a user actually uses the company's printer through his own device. So that's what we do, but we don't actually have a view of what the content is all about. But what we just monitor is when our own company's files are being shared through those devices. So that's what we do with endpoint DLP.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, for those on the call that don't understand what DLP is, DLP is actually data loss prevention, right? You want to ensure that your organization data are actually secure, right? Now, sometimes because of some maybe limitations and all that, you encourage your employees to bring their own device. With them, maybe those that want to work on weekends, right? They want to be able to do stores on, be it using their own personal system, right? But they still want to access companies' data, right? So with the endpoint data loss prevention, right, you're able to use out this particular solution to actually ensure that you are checking, okay, which of this organization are they sharing, right? Like Chidinma mentioned, the metadata. We don't check for privacy, we don't check for any other personal things that they have on their device, but you are majorly checking those things that are actually companies' informations that they are accessing with those data. Thank you so much for that. We have about just 5 more minutes before the end of the session. I will start with a couple of questions. So, Destiny, there's a question around compliance. Now, for you in your experience, how do you get employees, not just the compliance teams, to buy into compliance without seeing them as a bottleneck?
Okay, so I think there's no one size fits all to this. However, you can get creative with trying to employ different kind of processes that would encourage employees in an organization to stop seeing compliance as a bottleneck. And I remember you earlier mentioned that before now, you used to see compliance more like a police unit or department that comes to trouble your life or so, right? Okay, so like I said, there are several ways to do that because the essence of compliance in itself is to ensure that the organization, enterprise-wise, they understand what compliance means. And for you to be able to do that, essentially, you have to first of all establish what compliance means at different points in time or as it relates to different activities or different functions. Because a lot of times, if you look at it more extensively, you get to realize that employees or even companies, they tend to, dissipate compliance because they do not understand it, because they feel like it's complex. So it's the responsibility of the compliance officer to ensure that they understand the why behind the compliance, right? The why behind why maybe you are restricting KYC onboarding, the why behind why you don't want them to carry out a product launch. So you need to make them understand the reason why, right? So you need to also like make compliance more practical. You need to shift from policy to partnership, right? You need to ensure that the business see compliance not just as a unit that says no to different things, but as a business partner, because most times I've even experienced a sales team member telling me that we don't want their business to grow because we are declining all the merchants that they were bringing on board at some point in time. So you need to step away from that notion of, oh no, we don't want this to happen. So, okay, the reason why we don't want this to happen is because these are our AML measures or controls that we set in place. And this customer that you brought in on board at this point in time does not fit into our company's risk appetite, so to speak. So trying to get employees to move from just, seeing compliance as a bottleneck has to do with the effectiveness of the compliance officer, or should I say the effectiveness of the compliance culture in that organization. So I've listed 2 ways. Let me add one more. We also need to, carry out some incentive-based exercises, right? Like in my current organization, we do things around, you know, having compliance champion across businesses. So yeah, so we do things around, rewarding compliance champions. So when, for example, in different sectors, or let's say even in sales, for example, you get to see where the I'm trying to paint a scenario now. So you get to see where a sales staff is rewarded for maybe meeting his or her target for that month. Just the same way that sales staff is being rewarded for that, you could also reward employees for being compliant, right? You could set risk rating around it and then score them accordingly. So for the month, what member of the team actually adhered to all the regulation, or for the year, was there any regulatory breaches? If there were none, definitely you reward them. That would actually, propel others to see compliance as something that they should look forward to, and not see it as a bottleneck that always tries to stop their business processes, or whatever processes that it may be at that point in time. So I think that those are some of the ways that you can actually do that.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Chidinma, let's look into some part of the solutions in Marshall purview. Now, Marshall has local retention labels and sensitivity label. How do retention labels interact with sensitivity labels?
Okay, first of all, what is retention label? Retention label, what it does is to govern the life cycle of content. And sensitivity label, the feature, what it does is to protect content and classify them. So they both do different things. They are not actually conflicting. They can be used together or independently. So how they interact with each other is that a label that is encrypted at the same time can be kept for 7 years with retention label. So retention label always focuses on when to delete or when to keep, while sensitivity label focuses on who can access and how to protect the the content. So both of them, that's how they interact with each other, because you can use them separately and you can use them together. So there's no really, they are not conflicting, they're not actually kind of, one does not take precedence over each and that one. They can both be used together. So that's what the two labels does. So it's just in a simple term, for people that don't know what a retention label is, what it just does is to retain content like emails and all the informations that are in an organization. And the sensitivity label, what it does is to protect those content. So that's the difference. But they don't actually conflict with each other. They work hand in hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Malik, I see your hand. I'll call you maybe during the Q&A. Yeah, let's do this for you, right? Now, we know that technology is changing by the day. We are now in the age of AI. So how is technology changing the way compliance works today?
Okay, so I'll just briefly answer that question. So technology is actually redefining compliance, right? It's not just changing, it's redefining what we used to know it to be, to a more modern and a more fast and secure platform or framework. So that cuts across transaction monitoring, screening, and even onboarding staffs. I remember when I newly started in compliance, then it was all about paperwork. You'd see us, in a day reviewing multiple, in fact, a lot of customers manually. There were no like platforms where that like we have today, where you can easily just input your customers' details and get it in seconds. So right now we have all of those tools. We have KYC screening tools that can screen more than 100 customers in 10 less than 5 minutes and give you their reports, right? We have tools that actually trigger alerts for suspicious transaction and even fraud. We have tools that can give you predictive analysis of regulatory changes that will be coming up soon. So it's a lot actually. It's redefining the way we do compliance, and it's making it more easier, and it's making it more seamless, and it's also making us to fight against corruption like we do, or like that we actually do, so fight against corruption, fight against fraud. So technology to me has actually helped compliance go from the traditional way of doing things to a more modern and sophisticated way. So I think essentially technology has redefined everything about compliance.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Technology redefining, making the work easier. Awesome. I'm glad that technology is actually helping you guys too, because we the tech bro, we are here to actually help every team across board. Earlier this year, one of the things I was thinking of is that, okay, how can this generative AI stuff, how can I leverage it to actually build solutions for different businesses? So that has been my thinking since this year. I was looking at AI, the HR team, the finance team, looking at different teams. So I'm really glad that technology is actually, making work easier for you guys as compliance. Yeah, talking about
Yeah.
generative.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Destiny.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that just the same way it's helping us, work seamlessly. We're also, as compliance persons, or should I say from a compliance perspective, we're always looking out to do it ethically, right? Because we know that in as much as it's good, there are also side effects sometimes. So as compliance person, we usually look out for the ethical use of these technologies. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Chidinma, earlier we mentioned about ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, right? Now, what's
Yes.
changed in your controls with Copilot, like as an information security professional? What's changed in your controls with generative AI tools around either prompting, response, leakage, training, even data risks and retention for the AI outputs? What are the changing controls for you?
Okay, the change in control for I'll start with the prompt and response leakage. We use endpoint DLP, which is data loss prevention policy, to block uploads of sensitive file to AI domain like openai.com. We also apply DLP rules to browser sessions and endpoints to prevent prompt leakage. Uh, Also, for training data risks, like you mentioned, we make use of AI tools. We make sure that AI tools don't use our sensitive data for learning unless it has been approved or cleaned or made or has been fulfilled to be sure that okay, there's no sensitive information within it that and also so this kind of prevents our confidential information from accidentally being added to the AI training. Also, for the retention, uh, we actually use auto labeling. We use auto labeling to sensitivity label so that because I've had a case where during meetings a user who is in charge of taking notes use Copilot to generate Teams summary, and that we found out that automatically the file got saved to the OneDrive. So without auto labeling, that file has already gone into the system without being labeled. So with auto labeling, even if the user doesn't apply label, the auto labeling will just apply to that content, and we kind of use uh, confidential AI output to classify those kind of documents to know that okay, this document was generated by from AI sites or services. So we also for retention we define how long AI generated content should be kept by applying retention labels to Teams, chats, emails, and documents containing AI outputs. And we also use DSPM for AI, which is data security posture management, to monitor AI tool usage, by also the cloud storage to ensure AI application companies. So, for example, we use it to monitor the prompts our users has been kind of inputting in AI sites. Actually, the DSPM for AI actually tracks how many times a user uses AI's services, or uses or puts a prompt in an AI site. So that's what we use for the controls we have put in place for all these, for the generative AI tools.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I mean, Microsoft keeps expanding the tools as part of the Microsoft Purview, bringing a lot of new tools to ensure that as information security professionals, we're able to have more controls over what our users are doing with the age of AI. Thank you so much. Yeah, Destiny. Earlier we spoke about compliance framework. Now, with evolving regulations, how can company build a flexible compliance framework?
Okay, building a flexible compliance framework rather means that you need to go above and beyond to ensure that your compliance framework is more robust than ever, especially in the times that we're in right now, because a lot of regulations are coming out every single day that might warrant you to adjust your processes or even completely scrap them up. So you need to have a robust and flexible compliance framework that accommodates such. Now, what are some of the ways you can do that? Number one, you need to ensure that your frameworks are guided by values rather than laws or rules. Or should I put it this way? You should make sure that your framework is not just rule-based, but rather it should be guided by some core values that would enable you to accommodate new regulations that come in at different points in time. How can you do that? So for you to be able to do that, you need to say, okay, fine. As regards our compliance program, what are our core values? Is it transparency? Is it trust? Is it data protection? Is it data integrity? Right? So you need to ensure that all of those things are in place so that at different times when a regulation comes in, you can always adjust easily, right? Rather than the regulation just coming to disrupt your framework altogether. So another way you can do that is to ensure things around proactive regulators engagement. Sorry. Yeah, you need to ensure that you engage your regulators on time, even before any regulation is being implemented. And in Nigeria, one of the ways that the fintechs do that is through something called regulatory sandboxes, right? That's for new innovation. So we have a lot of initiatives that are there that are waiting for regulations to help them scale or to help them start operations. So if you're not sure of what you want to do, you can also involve yourself in regulatory sandboxes as it relates to CBN. So another way you can do that is to carry out continuous training and generally culture shifting, right? Because you want to ensure that your frameworks are flexible to accommodate new regulations. So if your organization or your employees do not understand what it means or do not understand what it means to have a flexible framework, when you have a new regulation that disrupts your system, that can cause more harm than good, right? So you also need to employ the use of technology, because now we have different technological tools, like I mentioned earlier, that can help you, adjust your systems or your frameworks to accommodate new regulations, thereby making it flexible. So you also need to incorporate compliance in your business processes. So when you are ideating, like you're ideating an idea that you want to launch, you don't just involve compliance when there's an issue. You involve compliance from the start to, execution. So when you do that, you're actually making your framework easy. You're making your workflow easy, right? And thereby making it flexible altogether. Because you don't want to build a very rigid compliance framework, and at the end of the day, you're unable to make adjustments when you want to. Because a rigid compliance framework definitely means that it will crack under regulatory pressures. So essentially, it's just making it, accommodating, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I mean, with different regulations as it's evolving, one approach highlight to that you mentioned is proactive regulations, right? Looking into how you can meet with regulators, telling them, learning about what are the things that they have in pipelines, right? So that you know that okay, this is what we are doing as an organization. So with that proactive approach, you ensure that okay, you can be very flexible when you're creating your frameworks. Thank you so much. So I just have one more questions for both of you. Then I will take the question that we have in the chat. Yeah, Chidinma. So we've been talking about the DLP, right? So what best method works, to cut DLP false positive or false negative across either a text data set, EDM, even a trainable classifier, as well as regex and training tuning.
Okay, for that, we use EXA data match and trainable classifier. These are more precise than just keyword and pattern matching. EXA data match, they let you match against real customer or employee data, example, actual account numbers, while classifier learns from real documents. Both of them cut down false positive and false negative dramatically. And I think banks, they use EXA data match to match customers' account number from a secure database. So and also, we use sensitivity label and DLP together to give context. For example, not every not every 16 digits is a credit card number. So we use data DLP, which when we are creating DLP, we upload the document from the finance team because they have record of what is actually credit card numbers. They are the ones that have those records. So we use that to create an SIT, then we use it to create a DLP so that anytime the rule matches those card number. So that's how we cut down on DLP false positive. We use SITs and trainable classifier for
Thank
it.
you.
And also
Thank you.
monitor alerts.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, the last question to Destiny. Now, in emerging markets like Africa, what challenges do organizations face and how can they navigate them around compliance?
Okay, so in emerging markets in Africa, some of the challenges that they face, certainly around regulatory uncertainties, right? Because they are so uncertain about the next regulation that is coming out. So that actually keeps teams, compliance teams and organizations most times on their toes. So those are some of the challenges because you do not know the next regulation that is going to be released, right? We also have things around cross-border fragmentation of regulations. So in Africa is a continent that has different regions, and in those different regions we have different regulations. Everything still boils down to regulation, actually. But more specifically for this point, I'm speaking to harmonization of regulations, right? In Nigeria, for example, we have the Central Bank of Nigeria. In Ghana, we have the Central Bank of Ghana. Same thing for Kenya, East Africa, and all of them. So they have different regulations. So if a company in Nigeria is looking to scale to, let's say, Kenya, they have to ensure that they have imbibe both the laws in Nigeria and the laws in Kenya. So those are some of the challenges, in fact, the most prominent challenges that they face. Some of that challenges could be across, infrastructural and technological gap, right? So for different countries that have different kind of infrastructural challenges, then we also have things around financial crime and fraud risks, because we've seen how that has actually affected a lot of fintechs, a lot of financial institutions, whereby they lost a lot of money due to fraud risks. And that is why, from a compliance perspective, you see that we are always trying to implore the use of effective AML controls to ensure that those things are, those loopholes are covered. So we also have things around trust and consumer protection, right? A lot of times, especially in Nigeria, if your fintech is not if your fintech does not have the capabilities, definitely you will not be able to acquire a lot of customers, and that can actually go a long way to derail business processes and even business operations. So now, how can we solve all of this? Well, is to ensure that we are always, ahead. We act proactively. I'm speaking from a compliance perspective. So speaking of uncertainties of regulations, you have to ensure that you act proactively. So, just generally scan the landscape and get to see, okay, where is this direction? Where's the direction of this regulator going as it relates to maybe a PSP, a super agent, and all the likes. So you need to be able to act proactively as a compliance, as from a compliance perspective, to be able to navigate some of these challenges. And for those nitty-gritties that has to do with controls, as a compliance person or as a compliance team member, you need to ensure that your program, your compliance program, your compliance framework are formidable. Are they in alignment with the most recent recommendations from regulations or regulators like PATEF, that's the Financial Task Force platform? Are they in alignment with the recommendations from them? Are they in alignment with the CBN AML measures? So those are the things that you need to look at when you are looking to navigate some of these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has actually been an exciting discussion so far. Please, guys, if you've been enjoying, if you're following the conversation, can you use the reaction button? Let me see those are still following us on the conversation. We'll go into the question and answer that we have. Please use the reaction button. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. It has been an exciting session so far for me. Yes. So I have a question from Chimaobi. It says as what is the importance of HIPAA, HIPAA in an organization? The importance of HIPAA, right? I think HIPAA is talking about just American health care, right? For an health insurance, I think Portability Accountability Act by the United States, right? So I think majorly for HIPAA, Chimaobi, if you're still on the call, the goal of the HIPAA is actually to basically safeguard sensitive health informations from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. Meaning that if an hospital or maybe an HMO, they have your health information, it is very important that they safeguard such information. The information should just be between you or the doctor that should use that information to treat you, and you can always request for your health information basically. So HIPAA is actually for a United States law for healthcare, majorly for personal health, privacy, health, and insurance, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Okwemi. So throughout this conversation, Kabiru asked a question that can the role of an information security professional and the role of a compliance specialist, can they be scoped as a profession? What's your take on it? Yeah, Chidinma, you want to go first? Okay, Destiny, go ahead. Yeah, taking on it.
Chidinma, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay, for yes, both of them can be scoped as a profession because they are both in line, security and compliance. For example, we that are protecting the data is also in line with with the policies the company has put in place, which is where the compliance comes in. So we are using that we are also using that. So we as a yardstick or framework to actually know what is being violated. So it's based on both of them can be scoped as a profession. Yes.
All right.
So because
Thank you.
they work hand in hand. Yes.
Thank you. I Destiny, you want to add to that?
Yes, so like she rightly said, definitely security and compliance goes together because in the grand scheme of things, they both fall under governance, risks, and compliance essentially for every organization. So definitely for information security, they are looking out for protecting risks around information security, data protections, and the likes. Why compliance? They're actually looking out for all the regulations, including that of data protection. But essentially speaking, they are all under risk, governance, and compliance. So definitely, it can be scoped together, but the endpoints where they have to carry out some executions might have to be separated at some point. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, I agree with that because for you as an information security professionals, you still have to work with the compliance team to understand, okay, what is the compliance requirements or regulatory requirements so that I can go ahead and implement for maybe our productivity suites, maybe the organization uses Microsoft 365, for example, now. So Microsoft has provided a solution called the Microsoft Purview, which used to be called the Compliance Center, where all compliance informations are there. So depending on the industry that you're working in, depending on the country, the region that you are, Microsoft has provided those compliance framework that you can basically leverage on to deploy those policies. The goal is to ensure that as an organization, you are working to ensure that the organization is compliant and you're saving the organization a lot from breaches. Yeah, okay, guys. The forum is open for question. If you have question, you can raise up your hands. I think Swanee raised up the hands earlier. I don't know if the person is still on the call. If you have a question you want to ask, please you can just raise up your hand or you can drop in the chat. So you have about 5 more minutes. We're running up the session for today, and so if you have questions, please, for our speakers today. It has been an amazing session. I've learned a lot in this particular session. In fact, I'm glad that we had this session today because the amount of information that we have, so that our speakers has actually shared with us today, it has been mind blowing for me. Yeah. So if you have questions, please feel free to indicate, which raise of your hands, or you can drop them in the chat. All right, Kabir, yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this section. It has been really informative, and I can assure that it helps us a lot. I'll actually like to ask about this security and compliance. I think I posted it in the group chat, but I didn't hear it get answered. If it can be scoped, when I said when I say scoped, I mean security compliance is something that is wide and industry based. Is it something that one could determine where he wants to focus his own profession on? Like, I don't want to generalize it. I just want to be based on the health sector. I just want to be based on the finance sector, just to help develop one's focus, that it won't be jack of all trades, master of none. You have a goal to aim at. That's what I'm looking at. If it's possible, you just have to know it all.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Kabir. Destiny, do you want to go first?
Yes. So, Kabiru, thank you so much for that question. It's actually a very good question because a lot of times I've gotten that question, and even myself, I get to think about it sometimes. So, speaking of the scope, like you said, definitely you can niche down to any sector that you want to, work on or work in rather. So, like for myself, I'm a lawyer and I'm actually working in compliance for fintechs and financial institutions. I also have other friends that are lawyers, but they are compliance for health and even energy, environmental law, and all of that. So definitely you can niche down, but you need to know, you need to first of all establish the fundamentals, right, of what it is that you want to, niche down to. So speaking of compliance now, what is compliance essentially in the grand scheme of things? You need to understand what compliance means. So now if you're maybe in health, you have to understand what are the information security requirements for health, right? So definitely you can niche down. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know it for like all of them. So you can know it, definitely establish it, but then you can niche down to say, okay, this is the sector that I want to employ my compliance or my security skills to.
Thank you so much for that. Chidinma, do you want to add to that?
Oh, she's already said everything. Yes, you can actually niche down to whichever sector you want to go, whether it's a fintech or a health sector. Yes, it's not basically it's not a jack of all trade
Yeah.
type of profession. Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Gabriel, I hope that answer your question because that is exactly my own
Yes,
opinion
it
as well.
does. Yeah,
It's
thank
actually
you
my
very
own
much.
opinion as well. Thank you so much. Guys, you have more questions? We have about less than a minute to the end of the session. Do we have more questions? I would like to use this opportunity to appreciate Destiny and Chidinma for actually joining us today. It has been an amazing session. I mean, it has been super amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us in Security and Compliance Corner. I'm very sure we'll be inviting you more for future sessions because at least before the end of the year, we still have like 4 more sessions to happen because it's going to be happening every last Saturday of the month, where we'll bring in different professionals to, enlighten us about things that we might not even be thinking about in our business, but they are doing it, what we can do. And we can take it back to our organization and say, okay, I attended security compliance today, and this is what are the things that we discussed, and how can we leverage on it for our organizations. So thank you so much, everyone, once again for joining us. And thank you so much, Chidinma and Destiny, for your time. I don't know if you have final words
Sorry,
for our audience. Yes. Yeah, if you have final
yes,
words
I
for our
think there's a
audience.
question. I think there's a question on the chat.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, okay, me. Can small businesses also be compliant? Yes.
yes, they can.
Yeah. So me, you can also. So irrespective of the size of your business, because Destiny mentioned that if you really want to scale up, you have to actually be compliant. If you as a small business, you're looking at, getting investors into coming to invest, one of the questions they will ask you is your compliance maturity. So if your business is not mature, they will the funds will not even get to you. Maybe they'll get to the other founders. Yeah, so it's always very, very important to be compliant, even as a small business. All right. Thank you so much for your time and have a
Thank you.
wonderful weekend. Yeah. Cheers. Bye for now. See you next month again. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah.